Psychotechnologies Live. Welcome to a very special episode of Psychotechnologies Live. Today we are doing vertical development. It's a very educational episode. We're going to go through, explain what vertical development is, from like the basics all the way to the whole thing. And we're going to show some of them. We're going to showcase some of them, go into some of the models, show what they're useful for. And then at the end, we're going to show you this like crazy awesome chart with all the vertical development stuff.
I want to start with like vertical development is this branch of psychology that's kind of new and kind of on the cutting edge. Like there've been systems of vertical development going back to various spiritual systems where it is clear that they map out progression along the spiritual path. But more recently, back in the 50s, Claire Graves was developing the foundations of spiral dynamics. Susan Cook-Roeder in the 70s was making sentence completion tests to try and measure people as they grow vertically. There's like the ground of vertical development is people grow up. And yeah, right. We know this from kids. We know this very easily from Piaget. That's very well accepted psychology. And then more on the cutting edge side, there's been theories recently that try and describe how adults continue to grow up, which is super exciting because we kind of, our development models have like, you're a kid and then you're a teenager. And then we just like, we don't know what happens, right? We just kind of give up on people. We're like, now they're adults when they turn like, I don't know, 18 or 21, or it depends on your country and the age of adulthood. Then you're just kind of like an adult or something.
It's like you're a child and then you have a birthday and all of a sudden you're an adult.
Right. That's it. That's just exactly what happens. Goodbye. Psychology has nothing more to offer you. But more recently, there's been these a variety of researchers trying to put together the map of vertical development and talk about and measure and quantify what it is to keep growing up as an adult. And like, we also know that some adults are kind of more mature than others and kind of more, and mature is like one aspect of development, right? And some adults are just like better at business than other adults, and some adults are better at math than other adults. Like, some adults are like just the people I'd rather hang around with than others. Like, we need some way to like explain what's going on here.
Yeah,
like, we don't just turn into adults and all become friends because, you know, countries are still at war with each other, and like, what the heck? Like, why don't we just turn into adults and become friends with each other? Like,
so there's a whole process to growing up essentially. And so there's like, essentially it's kind of divided, like there's the kid stuff and then there's the adult stuff. And so this is kind of like, what does it mean to grow up, I guess? And so there's a lot of different people have a lot of different perspectives on it. They think different things are important. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that they think are important. And then there's also like the stages. So like you go through different stages when you're learning or practicing something.
Right. There's so there's different ways that people have tried to measure vertical development. They're all fundamentally some version of, as we grow up, we experience the world differently or express ourselves differently or see the world differently. A classic example is that when I was a teenager, much of what mattered was my friends and what they thought of the world. That's just something that teenagers do. They're very embedded in caring what their friends think. And then some people are just like adults in that place where they still care deeply only what their friends think. And other people sort of grow out of that into some other way of meaning making in the world, which is kind of important. Like that teenagers all seem to sit in that like friend space and then grow out of it later or not is an interesting quality for our lives. All right,
let's get into it. Okay, so I'm just gonna explain like the stuff. I'm gonna build it as we go, and then we're going to just explain the pieces as we go, and then add in more complexity as we move. Okay, so let me share screen here. I'll look at you. Okay, so I'm gonna start.
I got your desktop. You probably want
sorry about that, guys. Don't look at my stuff. It's private.
Aha. Okay, what are we looking at?
Turns out I still play video games, so I guess I'm not that developed. We'll see. Okay, so this is I just took like a very simple something that isn't necessarily quite stage development, but is kind of around there. So this is like development for kids. So we have the chart. It's divided into cognitive, social, emotional, language, and movement, like, and physicality.
Mhm.
And then it's divided into months. So you have 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 5 to 9, etc.
Right. So we've kind of got like a chronological model here momentarily, which makes a lot of sense because little kids reach these maturity levels fairly on par with each other. Unfortunately, when we get to adults, I know 20-year-olds that are way more mature than 40-year-olds. But at kids, it makes a lot of sense to use chronology.
Yeah, so like kids, so like they picked these couple of categories that the researchers thought, or the child development people thought were important, and then they divide it into stages. So they're saying this is this is what's going to happen at each stage. So this is actually super useful. I was using it for my kid, just because like I'm first time dad. I don't actually know how kids are supposed to develop. And so I don't know if he's ahead, if he's behind, if there's something I need to worry about. And so I have these milestones of that correlate to ages, and then I can then see where he's at and see if he's lacking. So it's not like, is he ahead? Is he behind? Is he lacking? Is he ahead or behind in certain areas? And that gives me like a little bit of a heads up of like, I think what kind of person I think he's going to be, or like where his strengths and weaknesses are going to lie. It gives me a lot more nuanced, detailed information on my child, so I can take care of him properly.
Nice.
So for this, it's divided into months. So like this is what they're saying. You could give each of the months names, like you say infant, newborn, etc., or newborn, infant, toddler, adolescent, whatever. You can go through that if you wanted to, and then you can start drawing like describing that versus having it like individual piece. So if you look at
this one is a map of like play, the different styles of play.
Yeah, so if you look at the next one, so we got play here. So this one they didn't do, they haven't done like specific things that are going on. They're just talking in generalities of the stages. So unoccupied play, they're just doing stuff themselves. They're just like kind of like flailing around and just like moving randomly. I remember when my newborn did this, it was hilarious. It's like his arms are moving and his head is moving, and he's like, you can see like there's like some intention of him trying to do stuff, but they're kind of all just like moving on their own. And then like watching him like realize that's what's going on, and then trying to like coordinate himself. So like this hand-eye coordination stuff. And like that's great. Like that was hilarious to watch. I totally recommend it. And then now he's on solitary play, so he does play alone a lot, and he's doesn't always really like play with people so much. Kind of a little bit. He likes like parallel playing, like people in the room, but not with him. And so this is developmental stage, and he's starting to on look, and he's starting to engage with other kids as well. Like he's wanting to do that sometimes, but he's not. It doesn't exactly know how to do it. But he's under 2, so I don't really expect that. Although I guess he kind of skipped a stage because he went to parallel play. And then there is the socio play, cooperative play. So these are different stages that the children go through.
Right, but there's an interesting aspect you mentioned, which is that he's not necessarily traveling linear. He's kind of ahead of the map. He's gone into parallel play kind of early.
Right, yeah.
Okay. The maps are sort of like rough guides, and then we kind of got to overlay them over what we're seeing in people and go like, okay, this kid's a bit ahead, that kid's still on solitary play. That's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, actually looking at the spectator stuff, he does do the spectator onlooking behavior. But yeah, it's not necessarily corresponding exactly to the years, but it is stages of development. And so for me, like when I'm dealing with him and what I'm expecting, I'm not sticking him to the age, because it doesn't really work well with him because he's too advanced. But the stage development does work well. Like it is predictive, and it does give me a sense of what's going on.
And it's unlikely that you'd get to cooperative play when you are way back before without passing through the parallel play and the spectator.
Yeah. Actually, he is kind of like a little bit trying to do the associated play, sort of, but like not that well.
Yeah, it's also, and here's an extra puzzle with vertical development systems. You can have moments of the like acting at a higher stage, like
Yeah,
a moment of seeing you, like your little kid, around 1.5 year old, seeing you pick up an object and move it in a certain way. He may notice you do it and try and do the same thing, like pick up a garbage and put it in the bin. He may try and do an associate play by doing the same thing for a moment, and then later
yeah,
he's doing spectator behavior again, like he falls way back into that.
yeah. So like you have like the peak experiences, I think we call them, where
Right.
you can like transcend the stage you're in and see this whole new world of being, and then you collapse back down to like the previous stages.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, and so like for me, like with him, like because he doesn't really like play with me so much, but he likes to be with me. So it's like I'm not getting offended, right? Because I'm like, oh, like this is the stage development, this is how humans work. That's normal. It's not, doesn't mean he doesn't like me. An example for, so we're gonna move to adults. We don't really do a lot of kid stuff. So we're gonna move to adults.
Well, the kid stuff is fairly well decided in psychology.
Yeah.
Like way back in Piaget, when he studied his own kids, and he sort of put together the map of pre-operational, operational, post-operational, concrete, operational. You know, the moment where you can play peekaboo and the kid's going like, I can still see you there. Why are you playing peekaboo? And the moment before, when peekaboo makes a lot of sense because they don't necessarily perceive you as still there when you're all hidden behind a blanket or something.
I don't think it's exactly that, but yeah,
those are fairly established as their stages
yeah
that we transition through for kids, but then adults are the ones that we get a little bit harder to describe.
Yeah, because we're also adults trying to describe ourselves. Like it is much easier to do the kids, and the kids, like it's seemingly very neurological, where it's they can do it and then they can't do it. Like he couldn't stand without falling, and then one day he could, and then he just learned how to walk. Like a couple days later, it was very clear. Like it wasn't a software issue. Like it wasn't, or maybe it was, but like there wasn't anything I could do to teach him how to walk before whatever happened. And then as soon as it was, then he was able to do it. Right. And so it's like a very clear, but like with adults, and also I guess with kids, where like if they got developmentally stunted, it would also be problematic as well. And you would want, like, if you're going to develop this, I guess this would be like for occupational or physiotherapist or something like that, or really any therapy or coaches for kids.
All right, what do you have up here?
So what I have up here, so this is a very common stages chart that is used in therapy. So this is like the stages of development of change. So this is like, we've gotten a little bit more inclusive, more meta. So if you imagine someone's having some mental illness, you know, whether it's addiction, depression, whatever, and this is like a big impact on their life, or this is their life, or life centers around them, around this, or even if it's just like a small thing and like it's just a little bit of a part of their life, there's these stages of change that they go through in order to change. So the first one is pre-contemplative. So like that's where people start, right? It's that's before actually people start. So it's, I don't have a problem. So you're living your life and stuff is not going well, and you are very convinced that everything is fine and you don't have a problem. Then you move to contemplative stage. So you might have a problem. So you think about, you're like, oh, let me actually consider this. Instead of knee-jerk reaction, just shutting everything down, I'm going to actually think about this. Then you're going to commit, then you have preparation. So you commit to that action stage, you start doing it. And then there's some inflection point that happens where it's working, and then maintenance stage. So I'm living this life. So, you know, I've already done the things and now this is how I live my life. And, you know, you still got like maintenance and action, but it's very common, and it's very, well, it's like integrated, and you can move on. And that's just like, you're just in this new life now. And then they have this extra stage as like a setback. So your maintenance, you're doing the stuff, and then, you know, maybe you have a relapse or something else happens. And then you drop down, and maybe you have to start again. Maybe you have to, whatever. There's, you know, it could go a lot of places, but then dealing with those setbacks until really there should be another stage of of like the setbacks don't matter, I'm still going to do this. But that's controversial for a lot of things, so they don't put that in. So these are stages, right? Like, so it's like you can vary if you're like in the therapy world, like if you've done therapy or you have friends that do it, it's like pretty obvious when people are at it's pretty obvious when people are at what stage. Or maybe if they're in between stages, that you might think they're one of two.
It's also the motivation, like how much motivation you have to do stuff will be very different depending on what stage you're in. If you're like, I don't have a problem, and a couple of people in your life are starting to tell you have a problem, you're probably not ready to change it. You're still like, nah, it'll be fine. But as soon as you're like, I might have a problem, suddenly there's some motive to start talking about the problem or seeing a therapist about the problem or starting to change about the problem.
Yeah. Like you're mentally orienting towards it. And that's like, it's weird because it's like, this is why I think the stages like this model is helpful, is because you thinking about trying to solve it doesn't solve the problem. Like it doesn't even help solve the problem, but it is like an essential stage on the theory of change, on the stages of change.
This one's kind of interesting because it's
journey of change.
Kind of a cycle. Like we may do this hundreds of times over our lifetime for various problems that we realize and then decide to change. We may get very good at moving straight to action or something like that. We may move to action before we've really contemplated what the problem is. Like I'm gaining weight, and so I just start an action of like trying to fast or something, and that wasn't the problem, and it doesn't actually solve the problem, and so I might have to go back to the contemplation stage to work out what the actual problem was.
Yeah, and so the cool thing about this is like, let's say like something alcohol where it's kind of simple. It's like simple. It's like, are you drinking or you're not drinking? You know, like there is a bunch of metrics, like how much are you drinking? Are you reducing that or whatever? But which is an important metric. But having this the stage of change is like the psyche that will then affect. It's a deeper question. So it's not just how many drinks, but like how is your well-being? How are you orienting towards this? What's going on there? And so this is really helpful in other ways that are not just pure, you know, like outside objective.
All right, what's this one?
Okay, so I'm gonna do another one. So this is the Kegan stages. This one gets more complicated. Kegan's like pretty common, like pretty important and for this kind of stuff.
I think in the social circles of people who talk about stages of development, Kegan is one of the common ground models that they use.
Yeah.
It's
kind of like if you're doing the Kegan, you're kind of doing most of it, I would say.
I disagree. I think there are other models that are way better than Kegan, but that's okay.
Okay, whatever. Kegan's like
I particularly like spiral dynamics over Kegan, but
yeah, I think spiral is more complicated. But like if you're picking like something simple, if you wanted like a simple vertical development chart that was just like okay, what's like the minimum viable vertical development chart that kind of does the thing you want it to do. I would say Kegan is kind of that.
We can disagree. We're gonna leave it, but
we can disagree. This is just my opinion. It's This is not fact.
But I would say that anyone who is starting to look at vertical development should have multiple systems in their mind, because each of these vertical development systems take different angles on the puzzle. And so like for Kegan, they have this level, the third order, the socialized mind here.
Wait. Let's explain this, and then you can critique it after.
Okay.
Because I know you love like cross modeling stuff, but like let's get.
Well, it's just that they cut the pie differently, and with multiple models, you'll see the elephant clearer with a couple of angles. Yeah. So there's a bunch of different ways to cut this. I like Kegan. I think it's pretty straightforward. And it gets like this like nice line through the vertical development space. And then, but it's not the be all and end all. It's not the only thing going on. So you have, so for Kegan, he's got this like, developed into a developmental stage, what can be seen as object and what is one subject to.
and the underlying structure of meaning. So let me break that down for you.
That's specific to Kegan is the subject-object relationship.
Right. So we've got the developmental stage, which is, just like the name, like what we're calling it. What can be seen as objects. So that's what can you hold in your hand? What can you deal with? What can you point at and do things to? And then what are you subject to is what controls you. And then he's got like pictures of this. So it's a single point. So for example, my kid is not yet Kegan 1, I think. I don't know for sure, but I don't think he is. Exactly, or I don't know. Maybe he's a little bit around there, but the first order, so this is around 2 to 6 years. So this is, you can see your reflexes as object. So as adults, we know sometimes like we'll do weird things with our body, like weird things will happen with our body and like we didn't mean to. So maybe like you dropped something or you slipped or you reacted, like someone pushed you, you push them back immediately and you don't you don't really like think about it. This is something, adults, maybe we've worked through it, but this is something that has happened to us, right? Teenage boys, this is like huge. Like this was huge for me when I was going through puberty. I had to, because I got to know my own strength and I had to deal with that all the time.
How often do you like trip as an adult?
Oh, and I don't think I ever
like once a week, once a month, once every 6 months,
like once a year, maybe.
Right. Well, that's super weird. I remember being like a 10-year-old and like tripping all the time, or like bumping against a wall all the time. So there's somehow like I actually remember passing the transition of like reflecting on like the last few times that I ever made those like physical movement mistakes and like realizing my attention problems and then correcting them. And like, this was super interesting because I did it in a meditative way to like patch up the last times like I dropped things or I but yeah, as an adult it's very, very rare that I misgrab something or I drop something or I bump something over.
Because this is stuff that you can start dealing with when you're 2 to 6. And this is like this is something that you definitely do have to deal with all throughout puberty, post puberty, because your body is changing. So like all the stuff that you're learning, like that information gets outdated as you go through puberty, right? But then like for me, like once I stopped puberty, I'm like, well, I've had this body for a while, like I kind of know how it works, and I'm only really doing this when I'm trying to learn new things, or try things I haven't done before. So then I have to like really focus on what are my reflexes, like what am I exactly doing, like trying to learn a new skill. Like my kid's into balls, so I've been like practicing doing stuff with balls, and like it's like a lot of focus on retraining my reflexes. And so you're subject to the impulses. So like my kid is, like 2-year-old's very he's under 2, but they're very just like whatever is happening, like whatever impulses are going on, that's what happens, right? Like they just react to things, like they don't know what's really happening. That's why we don't put them in charge of stuff. They can't drive.
I damn hope Telda's can't drive.
He's got the cars, like he puts the feet in and then and he crashes into things sometimes, or he gets excited and like knocks the car over or something, right? Like which is like very normal for people his age, and this is just kind of like a description of that. And so the underlying structure of meaning making is then like how do they conceive the world, and he's saying it's single point. So like which is very true for my kid, right? He's very like he'll just say words, like he's starting to do a little bit of the association, or like what relationship with the words, but mostly it's car, bottle, cat, horse, whatever, right? Even like the animals, he either does what the animal says or the name of the animal. Doesn't to get him to do like both is like more difficult. It's like something he has to do. It's something like we have to do. Like he won't usually initiate that. Because it's just like there's just one thing happening, and that's whatever the thing is that he's saying. Anything else, Dad? We can move to second.
Let's go to
Okay.
stage 2.
All right, so stage 2, and I'm gonna go through this a little bit quicker. I'm gonna try to. It's so now that you guys kind of get this, so it's impulses. So when you move up a stage, you the thing that you were subject to now becomes object, and so something new becomes subject. So
Right. Your
the
body
impulse.
control is pretty much automatic. You know how to walk around, you know how to climb things, you know how to sit on things.
Yeah, automatic or like conscious, like you got a grip on it. So like 6 through adolescence, they're dealing with their impulses. They're not dealing with their reflexes as much. Aside from like the fact that they're changing their bodies and stuff, but they're not learning how to walk. They're or like what their body does. They're having to deal with like their impulses, like, oh, I gotta do homework, but I don't want to, this TV show, this and that. And this is like discipline, like when parents discipline kids, like they're doing like, this is like 6, they're trying to change that behavior. They're trying to change, they're trying to get the kid to control their own impulses. You can't say like, because they see someone fat and they're go like, oh, you're fat, like can't do that, right? But they're very subject to their own needs, interests, and desires. So they're not necessarily very aware of their needs, interests, or desires. They're kind of these are things that they're struggling to kind of get a hang of. But they are kind of, in theory, like the way he's saying it is that you're able to like look at like your impulses when you act out, and you're kind of stuck in whatever interests or desires you have. Like it's hard to do things I guess you don't want to do, things like that. Getting your needs met is much harder because you're not able to object level your needs. So you're not able to say, oh, I need these things. I need to get good sleep, or I need to eat well, or I need to.
Right. You can't really see your needs. They come up behind you and pounce on you, and you're like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can like not, you can have like some self-control and discipline. So there's, that's what they're playing with. So have some sympathy. And so you're categorizing this. He's got a picture of like a little guy with in a circle with lots of dots. So there's like lots of things going on.
Right. I'm in the world. I can pay attention to a variety of different dot-like objects.
Yeah.
Like I can see the food, I can see the chair, I can see the like, okay, I'm surrounded by all these objects and working out how I relate to them.
Yeah. So and then we got third order. Which is post-adolescence. So then you can start seeing your interests and desires. So it's very like, imagine like going to high school and being like, oh, you like the girl, like who likes who or whatever, right? Like it's very, very shameful, very hard to deal with, very whatever. A lot of that is because like they're not really able to acknowledge it's harder for them to acknowledge their interests and desires, versus like post-adolescence, get to college and past that, in theory, for most mature people, I guess. you can say like, oh, like you go over to like, I remember in high school, like it would be super awkward to try to do any of that. But like in college, you could be like, oh, like you're pretty, what's your name? And you're kind of able to display your interest, because it's like you can acknowledge that you have these needs, or there are things you want, desires. Not everyone does this. Again, like this is stage of development. Age.
There was another chart you had that had like percentages of adults at each stage. Click that. I
don't have that for Kegan.
Okay.
They do percentages and stuff. I don't know if that stuff's real, but
there's sort of, I gently call it bad science. They kind of survey the general population and try and work out who are in these various stages. You have this problem that if you are an adult that is on second order operations, you're probably dangerously impulsive and in jail, because you probably punched someone when they didn't give you what you wanted. And in our society as adults, we can't tolerate adults who punch each other. We just kind of lock them up, which is unfortunate, because often it's a misunderstanding or a miscommunication, but this is just the way it is. We don't have people at that order of thinking just wandering around the public if they're violent. So it's a shame, but as soon as you can start thinking third order, you can start growing an awareness of other people and how to like operate around them. So there's like some small, like 10% of the population at second order or below, and then there's maybe 20 or 30% are third order, and then the rest are sort of spread out depending on how you depending on which system you have and how many layers there are. You can sort of differentiate the middle stages a bit clearer and how much of the population is at each one.
Yeah, so like how you use this stuff is
that's the next one.
That's a whole other question.
Let's get through this, and then we'll talk about how to use it and some of the problems.
But this is like just like the way I'm doing it now is just sort of like just to like shine a light so that you can like see these things, and then we can talk about them.
Okay.
So yes.
Fourth order?
No, 1 second. Let me finish third order.
Yeah.
So third order, you have your needs. So like, this is where you start like thinking about your life. You're like, how do I get this need met like consistently? So it's not like, how do I get food? I'm hungry. How do I get food? It's, I'm going to be hungry for a period of time. Like I'm going to be hungry for the rest of my life. Like, how do I get food? Like long term.
How do I consistently make sure that there's meals in my fridge?
Yeah.
How do I my life, get a job?
Right. How do I, maybe like date or get married? Like, how do I deal, or maybe just like go single, like however it is that you're meeting your need, but like so you're sort of recognizing that this is a thing that happens to you a lot.
This is also like quite subject to interpersonal relationships. Like,
right. So that's
what your friends think of you is like heavy, painful, possibly.
Right. So that's exactly correct. So you're subject to the interpersonal relationships and mutuality. So like this is like dating is like dating is like a great example for this, because you have like the need of let's say sex or intimacy or reproduction or whatever it is that you're doing.
Or just the need to have shared interests with your friends. Like that's a big thing.
And you're subject to these like the winds of people and what they do, and like girls are like this, guys are like this, whatever, right? Like you're just subject to all that stuff that you don't have a lot of control over. And so that's represented in the underlying meaning making structure across categories. So we have the picture of a man, of a little guy, and then there's a bunch of little guys and dots. So it's
kind of like a mix of objects and people.
Right. So there's you and there's all these things that you can deal with, or that you want, that you can try to get. But then there's also all these other people around doing stuff. Fourth order, the self-authorizing. So I think this is like what Peterson tries to hit. It's essentially like with the self-authorization program.
Self-authoring
program.
Man, I have so many paradigms in psychology. I think of Peterson as a very verbal-minded human, and like popularizing very verbal-minded. And that's why he gets authoring. Like he gets you literally writing down a story. This part of his program is like 7 stories of your past that define you as a person, so that the way you're living is as a being in reference to their roots or their identity or their transition journey through life.
Let me explain this. Let me go through this one first, and then we can see how Peterson attacks it. So this is self-authorizing mind. Is what he's calling the next stage. Yeah, the previous one being socialized mind. So like that's the thing that's like kind of happening, is you're dealing with all the different people and their socialization is the main thing, and like how do you act in society. And then self-authoring mind is so you have as object level, meaning the things that you're able to look at and try to manage are interpersonal relationships, mutuality. So you're not when you meet people and you deal with them, you're not just trying to get your needs met or do whatever thing is being done. You're also managing that relationship as well at the same time. And so you're like, oh, I'm going to see like so for like it's not like, am I just going to bump into this person or whatever? It's not just what do I want from the relationship, but like, how do I manage this relationship? How do I make it better? How do I do the things that need to be done for it to go well over time? And so like the big one here, I think, like is marriage. Again, I keep going to this to like the spousal thing, because I think that's kind of like your biggest relationship in life usually. But you can do this to other things as well. So like, it's being married to people means that you have to treat them nicely, you have to, you know, try to help them get their needs met and all that, and that's true. But there is also this other added something happening called the marriage, and like that is a relationship that itself needs to be managed, and there's things that you need to do that maybe it doesn't bother the other person, maybe it doesn't bother you, maybe it doesn't bother the other person, but it's bad for the relationship itself. And so that is the next step when you're able to look at the relationship.
You could spend your whole marriage telling the other person what to do, right?
Right.
And that's fine on the individual level. If
you're doing appropriately, that's fine for socialized mind, right? Like maybe that's an appropriate social like way you guys socialize. But noticing that, yeah, like exactly you're saying, like noticing if you're doing that all the time, that stuff, you know, the what is it, the like the paper cuts or the slings and arrows of everyday life, like that stuff starts to add up. And then that's, you know, that's also for the person, but there is also a way in which you guys can interact with each other that will be good for the long term. That isn't necessarily just you and them. And I think like, whatever. Let's just talk.
Tell me about this diagram that we have.
So that's interpersonal relationships and mutuality, and you're subject to self-authorship, identity, and ideology. So you have a way you see the world, they have a way they see the world, and you kind of, and like who you are, who they are, and you're just you're subject to that. You're like, oh, I'm this, so I have to do this because that's what my ideology is. And like maybe you have some idea that like you can change who you are or things like that, or pick your own stories, but
I'm a libertarian, but I'm a rationalist, but I'm a
right. Like I had that like a lot. Like I'm a rationalist, so like if you're not explaining, like if you're not doing this rationally, like what the hell, like this isn't, like you're not including me in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is this, like you're subject to that, and that's, you know, a whole thing. And it's this stage that you're starting to see things systemically. So he has the picture of the guy, and then the circle, and the circle's empty. The space is empty, but the one thing in it is a circle, is the previous stage. So it's the circle with all the little people and all the little dots. So he's able to like, if you imagine like dramas are very like third order, and then like fourth TV order drama. Yeah, like a TV drama,
like a soap opera.
Like a soap opera is,
it's very appeals to that third order mind, which, you know, we all still have that third order socialized mind.
Yeah.
Not to say that people who like your current dating, we got like a Marriage at First Sight one going on at the moment, and there's like 1.3 million people are watching it every night. But it's not to say that they're like trapped at socialized mind. It's that they're possibly enjoying it with their socialized mind, because we all have a socialized mind in us who will still enjoy dramas.
Yeah, we all do, like that's what I said at the beginning, right? We all do the this isn't to be like better or worse or anything, like people who do things are bad. It's like we all do the lower order stuff, like you have to do that, right? Or you're not gonna
still have to walk. You still have to figure out how to get food,
right? Like like you can have the best plan for getting food, like, okay, I'll get a job, and then you do your job, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna, like, you set up your kitchen all nice, and you cook real well, and then you don't eat, like, well, you haven't like you haven't actually accomplished the thing that you want to do. So you're always doing the lower order stuff. It's, can you also do the higher order stuff? And then you know, depending on how you want to calculate it out, it's like
part of it is like, do you have enough time and space and capacity to hang out at these higher places?
Yeah.
And if you're stressed enough, you don't, basically.
There's all these, there's a lot of things going on. I want to make sure, like, like you keep pointing to it. It's not judging, and it's not saying people are better or worse. It's this is like a way of developing, and I like the Kegan model, like I said before, but it is correct that this is not the only way of this is not the only way of like living, and this is not the rank order of who's a good person. Like,
there is a puzzle here which I think is a really interesting one, which is you will occasionally hear a 5 or a 7-year-old say, "I'm not a baby anymore," which is that when we're as we grow out of a level, we sort of discount the prior place. They're like, I don't want to be seen as a baby. I'm only 7, but I don't want to be seen as a baby anymore. We have this thing where teenagers say, I'm not a little kid anymore, right?
Right.
They're like, there's a bit of like implicit rejection of the prior level.
Yeah.
And this is like, we should know this as we start operating with these systems, that there is a natural and implicit rejection of, first of all, the way we were when we were in a prior state, and also the way that other people are as we see them in that prior state. You know, they're so cringe. They're like teenagers do this sappy romantic relationship thing, and it's just like,
oh yeah. But then when you're married for a while, you kind of do it again because
right, which is really interesting. Like, what is it that we're doing where we're like teenagers and they're sappy love romantic thingy?
Yeah.
And yet we like in through another lens as an adult, I can be like, oh, that's really cute. They're like experimenting and trying to be the sappy romantic thing.
Yeah.
So there is this way in which, as we grow up a level, we sort of implicitly reject the lower level and have to sort of be careful and later go back and be kind and like be compassionate towards both ourselves on our journey and other people who are at stages on the journey where we were previously. And particularly, you know, for example, someone who has just discovered the good word of, let's say, science, you know, like, we can test for that, right? They're about to turn around and sneer at everyone else who isn't doing science, right? That's like, this is my new theory. I'm going to whack everything with it. And if you're not doing science, you're wrong, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's really annoying to meet those people. And also it's wonderful when they can be like, it's okay. Here, let me invite you into my science with me. Like, that's more of a pro-social relational quality, which people do go into eventually.
Yeah. And like, also we all be those people at some point.
Yeah. You know, like, that's a stupid whatever you've got because it's not scientific. Like, okay, those words came out of my mouth.
Like, especially like, if you're, as soon as you leave the stage, like, you automatically start to like shit on, like, make fun of that stage.
A lot of the development to the next stage, a lot of what pushes us to the next stage is noticing the limits of the current stage we're at. And so if we go like third order, I'm surrounded by all my friends. We all listen to the same music. We have all the cool opinions. And then I start to realize that some of my friends have different ideas to me. And I'm like, oh no, like we're like, there's a falling apart of the gang because some of my friends have different ideas to me. And that can be very scary and grounding until they can jump into like, well, that's okay because they're ideologies. And I'm like, I can find a new band of friends that all have the same ideology. And I can find safety in that like fourth order ideological match stage. So shift from like a social friend group to a ideological friend group.
I want to explain what he means by systemic, and then we're going to come back to that point.
Cool.
So he describes the meaning making as systemic. So essentially, like, you're able to see the system. So the example, like the easy example is, it's like there's like a drama on TV, and like there's watching it, and like, oh my God, I can't believe she, you know, her twin sister, you know, hooked up with her boyfriend while pretending to be him, but the boyfriend knew it, but pretend, you know, like, and like, you're just like this long story that, and then like, when you're like, but who cares? Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I see what's happening and I just don't, like, I don't care about any of this, or I see what's happening and it's awesome, or whatever, like, whatever it is that your reaction is, it's, you've moved into systemic. So you're like, kind of, you're outside it and you're able to see it. And so that's what you're saying, where it's like, you're, you know, the third order socialized mind, like, you're in your social group, but are you able to like step outside your social group and like objectively think about your social group? And then you gave the example of when your social group falls apart. So that one is like, if you're in third and your social group falls apart, you kind of have like two choices, right? You can go up or down. You can go back into categories and be like, okay, I'm a person and I'm doing stuff and I need to get my needs met. Or you can be like, oh, okay, I saw that example of a social group and, you know, I have feelings and opinions about it. And when I hit the next social group, I'm going to be doing things differently or the same. And
so this thing that happens when we get a wound at a particular level, we flee up and we flee down. And so I flee back into like just going about my day, getting my needs met, or I flee to like, well, why did my friendship fall apart? Oh, it's because we had different ideologies. Like,
or you make up stories and then you figure it out as you go along. And this is a thing that is very consistently happens. at least like a, couple dozen time or half a dozen, whatever it is, where you hit you can maybe hit the systemic and you can understand like, okay, the friend group is this, whatever, you have opinions, it dissolves and you go to the next one. You're kind of going all the way back down, right? So if you show up somewhere else and you're like with people, you kind of need to be able to do that single point meaning making again.
Well, maybe one way to think of this is also like, if you're in a big social situation and you suddenly have a headache, right? Your like lower order impulsive mind is like, we got to address this headache like urgently. It'll knock you out of thinking about the systems, caring about other people so much, and
right.
Like, we gotta take care of the us because you're in pain.
Yeah. So that's like sort of in general, like it can bring you down. But even saying like, even if you're on the fourth order of self-authorizing where you see the groups, even if you go to a new group, like at some point, like if I were to join a sports group, right, I have to start at the bottom and I have to be like, okay, like what is like, how do points work? How do the rules work? How do these things work? Right. Like it's very, very low in a social perspective. It's very, very low level stuff because they're all like involved in the social dynamics and like this team is winning and that team is losing and trading and things and that. And like, it's very complicated. And I don't understand that because I don't even understand like the rules or how the point system works or whatever that is. And so I would need to go in and build that up from the ground. So, what are all the points? What are the things going around? Okay, what is Super Bowl? Oh, this is what we do. Oh, like I like that's just fun. Like I'm feeling the hype, but like, I can't feel it too much because then you're gonna like get crazy or whatever, right? And so then you start to need to manage my impulses around that, and you start understanding like other people. So it's not just like the group that I'm in is not going to be a monolithic like this. We all agree this. It's nuanced because they're people, right? They also have all these other stages. And then I can get to the point where I'm like, oh, okay, like I get this football group and there's these other football groups, but I like this football group because, it's the whatever thing. I don't know how football groups work, but you got it. It's the right team and they're the blue team. And
Daniel just hasn't developed into an understanding of football. Let's just leave it there.
I can't handle that. I'm good with like the video game stuff, but the sports stuff is less good. Unless I'm playing it. If I'm playing it, I can like I'll like learn all the rules and stuff. But if like watching it is burdensome to me. So yeah, so then you like you start developing your teams. You start looking at the teams and so when you're doing that, when you're saying my team is better and you're like doing some like analysis, like this is fourth order stuff. But and the thing is to remember is that you're subject to identity. So this is why I think like football people are very like their team, like whatever city they're born, like that's their team. And so they're stuck with that identity of like, even for me, it's like the Raptors because I'm from Toronto. So Raptors is the best. Do we have a football team? But Raptors is basketball. I don't even know if we have a football team, but we got a basketball team, which are the Raptors. And so I'm like, yeah, go Raptors. Like whatever's happening, if Raptors win, I'm happy. If they lose, like whatever people say, I say no, Raptors are where it's at. Right? Because that's my identity. I have not progressed past that at all. In terms of football.
All right, tell me about the next stage.
But the fifth order stuff, so some people have progressed and they're able to take this self-authorship, this identity, and they're able to create something around that. And so they're able to say, oh, this is my identity, it's not my identity, I have a more nuanced identity. So I think a lot of like the trans movement, this is what they're trying to do. I don't know that they do it well necessarily, but I think this is what they're trying to do. Yeah, it is very complicated, and there are a lot of stuff happening.
Let's not try and answer like here's a puzzle, a really interesting puzzle. We have this vertical development system of like the way one person's mind may change and develop into greater complexity over time. And then when we have groups of people who are growing up through these greater complexity, we're talking about roughly the level of development of an entire group. And that's like a group could have like some 5s, some 4s, some 3s. Like we wouldn't be able to like put them on any of those levels if they've got people in all of those places. It's a big puzzle. You might even have like all of these different types of people within that group. And especially divide it by ideology, if you divide it by so it's one thing to talk about this on the individual level, and then another very interesting thing to try and talk about it on the level of a collective. Like, for example, if you take a collective like a religion, like Christianity, like in what ways are there Christians at different levels, and in what ways are there groups of Christians organizing themselves into different levels of complexity and being able to communicate at different levels of complexity? If you take a group like scientists, in what ways are there scientists who are doing this complex level of thinking, and in what ways are there scientists that aren't quite at the level of their self-transforming mind?
Yeah.
Obviously, we've got psychologists who are like very proactively studying the mind and the mental maneuvers going on, and then you'd have chemists who just aren't. They're like doing their chemistry, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's not to say that it's up there. It's just that they may or may not interact with it in the same way as the psychologists who are trying to be self-authoring at the same time. Maybe
that's not how
psychologists that also aren't organized, but
I don't agree with that. That's not how I'd break that down.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right. Like in the fields, in the spaces that people are at different levels. If you take the academia, I think the point of the undergrad is to teach the socialized mind. From this perspective, like,
right,
I'm looking
so there's
at
something really interesting with the educational system, right?
Eddie, Ellie, let me finish.
All right, finish.
So like this is what the academia is trying to do. I'm not necessarily saying that it's the only thing they're trying to do, but from this perspective, that's what they're trying to do. Where undergrad is socialized, so you need to show up for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, and do all the things and do it passable. Then you get to like self-authorizing, where you're doing a dissertation, or the other thing that's like a dissertation,
PhD.
And but PhD, like PhD is a lot of stuff going on, but like the main thing that, like, let's say the main thing or one of the main things that you're doing is the dissertation. So you're doing some sort of original research. So you're demonstrating that, not that you can like follow instructions, which you already did in undergrad, but that you're able to look at the interpersonal relationships. Like, you're able to look at the system, you're able to look at the field that you're studying, and you're able to contribute something new to it. Practically speaking, it's not actually, I don't think, real anymore today, but this is in theory what it is, what they're trying to accomplish. So anytime you're doing original research, you're doing that, and so they're trying to get you up to the 4th order so that you can, and then that means you got a doctorate. That means you are self-authorship in that whatever field that you're in. And so I think this is true across all fields. Like chemistry, they don't study the human brain really, so they're not going to have, like, that's not like the thing that they're really developing, but you can still have that self-authorship in relative to your field. So you can still look at the field of chemistry and say, hey, you guys are off about this. I'm going to contribute this, and I'm going to write a paper about it. I'm going to do research about it, and I'm going to transform the field in this way. And you can do there's any fields you can do this to, essentially, or you cannot, or you can be sucked into the thing that everybody else is doing. That's a socialized mind. Did I miss anything else? Anything you want to add? Jump in.
We got to go into
before we move to 5.
We got to be in 5. Let's talk about 5.
All right. So then 5 is, it's the same. Again, it's the same transcendent. So you're taking what was object and you're turning into subjective. So the self-authorship identity ideology, you're looking at that as the object level. So you realize that, hey, I can write my own destiny. Who am I? I get to pick who I am. What is my ideology? What do I believe? And you get to like make those choices. And like this thing, I think this stage really like points out that you can do this in some areas and not other areas if you wanted to. I think it's pretty rare that people can do this for everything. But in theory, it's possible. Like, I think enlightenment is like trying to claim to be that, but it's
tricky because looking at Kegan compared to other vertical development systems, Kegan only sort of identified 5. Other development systems sort of may have 6 or 7, and the top one always says and everything else and everything above this. So it's not clear where's the starter 5, and like if we could like be like, oh no, there's a 5 here, but there's definitely like a 6+ or something. Like, could we add that on top of Kegan? It's not.
Yeah. There's probably six and stuff. I'm not gonna get into
Well,
that.
like, to cut it, right? So right now, 5 includes enlightenment. 5 and up is enlightenment.
No. I said enlightenment. Kegan didn't say that.
Kegan doesn't say that. No.
Yeah, Kegan doesn't say
But
that.
like, if you were like, is an enlightened person, and enlightenment has a lot of definitions. Enlightenment has to imply some amount of like 5 and beyond.
Yeah.
Right. But
that would include all of 5 essentially.
Potentially.
Yeah, because the way he has it, but let's do Kegan stuff. I just meant it as a
yeah.
I didn't mean as a main point, just as a like sort of hint to other psychotechnologies. So self-authorship ideology. So again, like I'm coming back to the trans thing. I know it's a little culture worry, but I want to do it. I think it's really relevant. The trans movement is saying you can pick your own identity, right? And so they're looking at like the gender sexual spectrum mostly. So they're saying like you have the self-authorship to pick your own identity, and then like people, oh, you identify one way, like gender fluid is like your gender switches all the time or sometimes, and like actual, like, you know, I guess like old school trans where you're one gender and then you become another one, like you have taken on that mantle of the ability to change your identity and then live out that life. And
I think where you're mixing in things that are very, very much more complicated and hard to mix in here. Particularly like one thing you see in trans is people tend to shift from one where they start to where they end up. So they go M to F and then they stay there. They don't end up like fluidly switching back and forth.
That's not true. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different gender expressions, and there's a lot of gender journeys. I think, like, again, like the space is very complicated because there's a lot of ideologies that sound the same but aren't, or interact with each other weirdly. And I'm not like nuanced on that, so I don't want to. But I'm just saying, I'm just like kind of pointing in that general direction of like the trans movement. Like, I think what's generally true about the trans movement is that you can transition your identity, your gender identity.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Like, I think they kind of all believe that. If you don't believe that, you're not really part of the trans movement, no offense. But and then like what that means, how that plays out, like those I think are the system of systems, right? So I believe that gender is like this. I believe gender is like that. I believe this is what it means to transition. I believe that. I believe this is what a woman is. I believe that a woman is. Those are all different things happening, and those are all different systems that are going on within this larger movement. And I think really the trans movement is trying to like break that fixation of like your identity, your gender identity can't be changed. And I think the LGBT stuff, like let's say pre-trans, is your sexual orientation can be changed. And so then they come together, and then they have this movement of like, oh, your sexuality and your gender is more fluid than you originally thought. And then it's complicated, and then that's where you get into all the philosophies and stuff. Would you agree with that?
No, I think this is a mess, and it's very hard to talk on a politically loaded topic like this. It's much easier to talk about a self-transforming mind as you talk about maybe jumping between different political ideologies, just even left and right.
No, so this is stage of development. You're you're doing the order of the mind. You're doing the mind looking at the mind. I'm doing the mind looking at things that aren't the mind. And I'm doing that on purpose because I think it's less confusing to explain it. The psychotech, we do tend to do the order of the mind. We do what our mind is like looking at itself, looking at the mind, or looking at minds, or looking at itself. And that gets very, very complicated. And I love that stuff. And that kind of is our focus. But just to like explain this in a very basic way that other people can understand before we start making it self-referential and more complicated.
I think you're mixing things that don't mix here.
How so?
Let me run through, let's say like left and right of politics, right? So we have the left leaning, we should socialize more. The right leaning, we should individuate more.
No, I'm not. No.
What happens?
I think that's
two ideologies, right? That is
No, left and right have some distribution of this, right? And so
no, they're ideologies. You can say I'm on the left, and you can meet another person on the left, and you can argue about how left you are, of course. But they're like, just summarize them as ideologies for a moment, and then what happens when you suddenly realize both the left and the right have some good points, right? That's when you're starting to shift into a fluidity, like self-transforming mind, that the dialectic between two ideologies.
You're doing that in relevance to politics.
Sure.
Right, which is a different, like, which is a subject that exists that people can do that in, just like the trans is a subject that people can do that in. And I'm not saying, I don't want to say that like people who are not part of the trans movement do not have self-transforming mind.
Right.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that like specifically with gender identity, right? If you're taking your gender identity as something that is you have control over and you can change, then you're a fifth order self-transforming mind within context of that. I'm not saying that's a good thing and you should be doing that or not. Like I'm leaving the politics side. I'm not judging here. But I'm just like giving that as an example. I can give a right example.
Well, let's like take another example. The classic, I'm going to say the political one, the 16-year-old tanky, which is the 16-year-old communist, right? There's a person who exists relationally as a communist because they think communism is a good idea because all their friends are communists. And you have the same phenomena in the trans type people. There seems to be some sort of social phenomena where an entire social group starts questioning gender norms collectively together, which is really tricky because we're like, oh wait, they're in the post-adolescent sort of socialized mind. You can be there and doing something.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I was talking about 100%. Like, I think this happens like where you can have a social group and like everybody starts doing a thing and then you start doing that as well, right? And you could be like, and I do see this as well. Like, you're getting too much into the trans stuff. I didn't want to do that. Because no, but I'm brought up in a very specific context and you're starting to move it around. Because like people can decide to become trans for other reasons, right? They can do it because they think that their needs and interests or desires they can do it because it's impulsive, like, oh, that just seems cool. I don't know if you can do it reflexively exactly, but you can do it because you're in a relationship with someone and then that thing is going to work out better if you switch genders. Like, you can do it for, like, you can come from all these places. I was talking about the movement per se in general, what they're claiming, like that larger societal thing that is affecting our society, like where it is that they're coming from, what they're trying to do. And I'm also, again, like, I'm not saying this is good or bad, right? I'm just giving that as an example because I think it's a really simple example that everybody is exposed to, and then they can understand what it means. And if you're on the other side of this, then you can say, well, it's not always good to have that flexibility. And if you're on this side, then you can say, oh, I get what the flexibility is and we are morally superior or whatever. I don't really care what you guys do. But the point is that the listener should understand what I'm referring to. Have I made that clear? Can I pick up maybe a right example and then we can do that?
I'm just gonna leave this here. I'm just gonna leave it as it is.
All right, let's pick the right one of and sorry, like, I don't mean to stereotype you guys, but I'm just like, there's a cultural war here and I'm trying to manage the size a little bit. The right example maybe be like this new Christian movement, right, where people are really like into that. So I've seen this a bunch of times where people are like and I've experienced this as well myself, where people are like starting to see the world differently, and then they're open to these new ideas that are actually the old ideas. So like, I have this friend that he was atheist and then becoming Christian, and so there's the becoming Christian, like, oh, this is what all the cool kids are doing, I could do it, but that's not what he did. And he's not, oh, I've seen other people where they're converting because they want to be in a relationship with someone else, and that's not what he did. He did, no, like, I think I actually am Christian. Like, this is who I am on the inside. And this is who maybe I've always been and I haven't seen it, or there's like a lot of stories that sort of happen with that when you transition this way. but what you're doing is you're taking control of this narrative, or you're taking control of how you identify who you are in this world, like in the systems, like there's all these things happening around you, there's all these different systems going on, and who are you relative to them? And so to give another example that's in the middle, so for me, like the way I'm seeing all these political systems, I'm seeing all this cultural confusion and conflict, and it is over important things, and it is important to have those discussions. And also I'm trying not to get caught up in any of them. And I don't identify as someone who doesn't get caught up in them, because I do, and that happens. But this is the identity that I'm striving for. And when I self-authorship myself, like this is what I'm trying to do. And when I'm developing my ideologies, it's the ideologies that are like, okay, like we have to include at least most people. You can't just knock out half the people. That's insane. And that's me. Like that's me trying to take control and trying to manage all these systems and be in places where I'm not going to get like hurt. So what I'm trying to say is like I'm the best, but other people can also be good.
What I'm trying to say is that I'm actually a level 6 and you're only easily level 5, and you should be ashamed of yourself for being so low.
No. We don't shame other people, because somewhere. And
no. Only you shame other people. I didn't actually say that. You shame other people. I'm better.
No. Me saying I'm the best is not shaming other people, right? Unless there's someone else who thinks they're the best. But then you're arrogant, and you should stop thinking that.
So there's this quality, like I was saying a little earlier, there's this quality of not liking the levels that I've sort of visited in the past.
Well, you don't like the level that you were like just in.
So yeah, there's often like,
and I think there's an insecurity there, and it makes sense to reject those levels, but like, don't be a dick, guys.
Right. Well, do you have the spiral dynamics somewhere? Do you want to pull up a spiral?
1 second, let me finish this one, and then we'll move to the next one.
Okay.
We planned this all out before, remember?
Yeah.
So this one is, it sounds beautiful, and it sounds like you're what could possibly be different, but you are still subject to something. You are subject to the dialectic between ideologies. So you might have all this self-authorship and like this ability to create these identities, but these identities don't exist in a vacuum. They exist relative to other things. So it's hard to not pick culture war ones. Because this is essentially like what's happening now is like a lot of what's going on in the world is, what do these identities mean? So
that's because the world's that, like, we're trying to process this. We're trying to, as a global collective, move from like a self-authoring to a self-transforming anyway. And so doing that, we're getting very uncomfortable with our ideologies. Like that's like I said, on the individual level, you can grow up or grow down when you like come into conflict at this level. The fact that we're in this polarizing culture war is an indication that like many people are trying to like shift to the next thing, the next understanding.
Yeah, I think there's a larger societal thing that we're going to want to
kind of like embedded in.
We get there. Yeah. But for now, again, like I keep trying to keep this simple, because it's like it itself is super complicated. So I'm trying to like bring it in a way that people can follow and understand it. But you're subject to the dialectic between ideologies. So I don't know if you saw this TikTok video that's like popular now. It's this girl, I forgot how she names herself, but she's like a housewife, and she's got this like very like 1920s or 50s like housewife attitude. So she like bakes, and she got big boobs, and like she wears that like old outfit, and she's like, I make the house and all this stuff, right? And so I mean, the video itself is very innocuous. Like it's just a pretty girl talking about her life, and which is very TikTok. But like the effect that it's having, where there's this like huge split where people are like, you're a terrible person, I hope your husband beats you, you're like bringing the feminist movement back 50 years. And then there's other people who are like, oh, that's so progressive, that's so amazing, that's so and you get this split because
she's struggle of ideology here.
She's identifying this way, and like I don't know her life or why she's doing any of this stuff or how it works. So I'm just taking it as like, oh, it's like a person doing stuff. But it winds up triggering like these ideologies. So what does it mean to be a housewife? And for some people it means like you're getting beaten and you can't leave the house and you're essentially a slave. And for other people, it's like this amazing magical experience where you can take care of your kids and make your husband happy and like live your best life and freedom and love. And it's so like the contrast is so different between those. And I think that's like, yeah, that's exactly what you're saying within our culture is you can identify this way.
Love to hate on other people. It's like a hobby at this point.
Well, it's the internet, man. The internet there's something weird about it. I don't quite get it, but there's something weird about it. It's not like when you're on the internet, like they're people, but they don't always act like people act. You know what I mean? I don't know what's going on there. But that's a different one. But like even her like saying that is like she's trying to she's it seems like she's like I don't know her and I haven't watched her channel. Probably should have, but too late for that. But it seems like she's crafted an identity for herself, and she's subject to the dialectic between ideologies. So she's crafted the ideology. She's crafted the identity, and she's expressed it in a certain way, and then she doesn't have control over this narrative, right? Like she doesn't have control over what the words mean or what other people interpret them, or what are they going to do with this stuff and how they're going to change that around. And so she's, let's say she's like doing this fifth order. I don't know where she's coming from and all this stuff. I can't like say her, but like at least like
also, it's always hard to map other people.
Yeah. And especially
always
TikTok
like
video.
Possibly slightly offensive to try and map other people, because we take the whole complexity of a human being and we reduce it to this sort of 2D model and be like, well, you fit kind of over here. And walk away feeling successfully like we've mapped someone else.
Yeah. So to do that,
let's just do that right now.
Let's just do that right now. But also recognize I don't know this lady, and I'm being extra generous here. Like I am sort of like looking at the world in a certain perspective so that you can follow along and you can see that perspective, not necessarily because it's true in all cases, but just like to get you to see what's happening. So she's doing the self-authorship. She's subject to the dialectics between that, and she sees the system of systems. So like to be generous with her, like let's assume that she went to, like she saw a bunch of ways to live life and she chose this way. And she doesn't.
Maybe we can map her on multiple levels, right? So one way, maybe she's at level 5 and she like tried out corporate life, and then she tried out a bunch of lives, and then she realized that she
this is like this is wild speculation. Maybe she did that, like maybe she went through these journeys and this is where she's at.
Like that's a possibility. And maybe she did she was on the 4th order of the like self-authoring, and she was enjoying,
right,
she found like rewarding interpersonal relationships, and she like found this ideology that one actually seems enjoyable.
I like this take.
Or maybe she was at 3rd order and she was like, oh, strategically just working on the relationship level, I can live a good life by putting myself in this little box and just living in this way. Or maybe she was on like 2nd order and she was like, all I need to do to meet my needs is make sure that I take care of the house and like I win, right? Maybe she's just a very simple person doing it like that. We don't really know from a distance.
I like this take. Like, and I think this take is exactly what the internet's take is on. It is where you do have all these bunch of takes where people, like this is my take, I guess I kind of just biased in this way, which is something I should probably look at. But is it just interpersonal, and like this is how, like she's just doing this so that she can be with her husband, like because that's the only way that she'll be able to be with this man. Is it that it's the only way she can get her needs met, like she's going to be starving on the street if she doesn't be the slave, or is this just impulsive, like this is a thing a lot of people are projecting, where it's oh, you can't put these videos out because it's going to cause other people to do this, and like maybe she just read an alt-right blog post and now she's she went to one Jordan Peterson video and now she just immediately shuts off her life.
Here's a puzzle. This is something that happens wherever we're at mentally, socially. When we see other people and we see the way they're experiencing the world, we map them either to where we're at or below, right? Because we don't know what's ahead of us, right? So if I see someone sort of declaring that they are a housewife and they're in if I'm at level the self-authoring mind.
This is a lot of people. You're talking about a lot of people.
This is just what we do relating to other levels. So if I'm at ideology, I'm in authoring mind. I'm like, these are the right ways to live, and I see someone else doing this housewife thing. I'll be like, oh, she's doing a socialized mind thing. She's putting herself into the socialized mind box. Right. Because I'll map her below me, because that's what I'm always going to do. If I'm at the socialized mind and I see someone doing this like stupid housewife thing, and I'm like, I realized I can climb the corporate ladder relationally, I'm going to map this person to the instrumental mind. She's just worked out that she can get free food if she just sticks to her house. Right. That's like, I'm just constantly going to map people to either where I'm at or below.
Right.
If it's where I'm at and it's a good thing, then I'll map them to where I'm at. If they're in like the ideological opposite, I'll map them below. Because often, like, I've had to switch back and forth ideologically between individual and collective, between where I am and where I was. Like, I've realized the error of my ways, and I completely flipped over to the other side of politics, to the other side of identity, in order to live the better life that I could see over there. So I will consistently see people opposite me and map them below. That's just what I'm going to do. There's a super, I think of it there being like a spiritual skill to map people upwards. Like, even if you see someone in a second order instrumental mind, how are they doing something more complex, more like self-transforming in carrying out their instrumental stuff? And with practice, we can kind of see depth in people, which is a pretty exciting way to live. But from the get-go, it's quite difficult. And from the, like, as a default, we reject the level below us and we map people down into them. And we're like, they're so stupid, they're still scientists. Like, okay.
I want to reflect it in a little bit like lower order way. Like when you're seeing people like project, like essentially they're projecting, right? Like when you see people project what they think is going on, they're all very often relating it to their level. And so this is like a way to interpret, people's hate is like, when they're operating on that level, it's like, well, this is like probably what you do, or like to you, this is the best case scenario, like to the extent your imagination is able to do. I do get caught up in assuming everyone's better than me all the time. And
that's a spicy and complicated take.
I don't know that's this one, but that is a thing where I assume, like, as soon as I find out, I have the opposite, where if I find out something new, I assume everyone has known this except for me
forever. All the time.
Forever. Like, everyone knew this.
I never knew.
They learned it when they were 5, and I just missed that day of school. It was a Jewish holiday. But this is obviously not true. This is just a bias that it's like typical mind fallacy kind of stuff. I don't know what it exactly, but it's something I struggle with for a while. I don't know what I'm talking about this. Let's get back to the other stuff. Okay, so this is Kegan. I would say like this stuff is pretty like generalizable. I like to point it at specific things. It's a little easier to handle, but there is also kind of like this implication that like generally this is like people's general level of how they approach life or new things, and that's sort of up to you, I guess, what you feel like or not. Then we got, how much time are we at?
We're at 1 hour 18. So
you want to keep going?
We can keep going. We already have a video on spiral dynamics, so we can just touch on it and link back to that other video.
All right. So now that we've done that vertical development spiral dynamics example,
spiral dynamics is another vertical development system. Someone else completely, I think Kegan came later. I don't know if he ever had a good look at spiral dynamics. Kegan's still around. He's still a practicing psychologist.
Yeah, he's still alive. There's another guy, Lasky? Kegan. I don't know. There's another one that's like Kegan. I forgot. Huh?
Yeah.
I think it says no.
Anyway, spiral dynamics started in the 50s with Claire Graves, got taken up by Don Beck, who recently passed away, who popularized it's a level system of meaning making. And they conveniently color coded it so that it was easy to talk about. Then Ken Wilber came along and literally stole the vertical development system. He grabbed from Gene Gebser and he grabbed spiral dynamics and he made his own and slightly changed the colors, but basically he plagiarized spiral dynamics. I really like spiral dynamics. It's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
Vertical
I plan to
of-
plagiarize that at some point as well.
It's that I can get on a rant about plagiarism and like copying from that's another conversation.
No, I'm not going to plagiarize, but I'm going to.
All you need to do is credit back. If you credit back effectively,
Yeah.
and it's not plagiarism. It's like I built on this.
I'm going to fit it in. I'm going to fit it into a larger.
Super important. Anyway,
because I'll tell you why. Because you're subject to the dialectic between ideologies. This is the thing that needs to be done in order for people to progress to be at fifth order self-transforming mind. Is they need to be able to talk to all the different systems.
And so that's credit them and honestly connect to them, as opposed to be like, mine is the one, ignore the others, which is sort of Kegan never said. Wilbur never said to ignore the others, but he definitely said mine is the one when there was already a system sitting here. Anyway, levels of meaning making. Propose that, and again, we have this problem that each level doesn't really like the level before it. Big problem when talking across spiral dynamics. You have concepts like the mean green, which I'll get to, and you get problems where this on this diagram it says amber in spiral dynamics, it's blue, where blue like red.
You're jumping around,
but right from the bottom, from the lowest level. On the lowest level, you have
so just like, let me just give like a little perspective on this. Sure. Spiral dynamics is kind of like, I think, one of the base models that we generally use for the psychotech stuff. And it's like one of the base models that the metamoderns use for like understanding our society, I think.
So on an individual level and a collective level.
Individual collective level. This is just, it's like a really good it's a really good way of like they take like all kind of like these main points of development and they just explain it really nicely in like a linear way. Careful to not like to take it too seriously and stuff, but it's really good. Like really helpful.
We have this puzzle that we don't really sit in a specific level. We sort of sit over maybe a few levels at any given time.
Yeah.
We also seem to be able to occasionally like burrow under a level and come out the other side, or like shadow an entire level. That seems
it's not always clean.
Yeah.
It's not always clean, but I found like when I'm using this and thinking about it, like I find that I'm like, oh, I'm stuck in this level.
Right.
And so to like try to deal with the level that I'm stuck on and solve that problem, or to go down a level, or to like try to move up a level, I know these are like all the possibilities, but it does give a perspective that makes it easier to realize things.
I mean, my perspective is, well, like I'm not such a full adult if I'm stuck at this, which I often am. I stuck at this lower level. I need to like work out why I keep being psychologically drawn back to this place, process it so that I can climb back up to my greater complexity of thinking.
Yeah.
This adult. Sorry. I mean, I just want to say the line, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, which is a classic, like you want to be like amber or orange, or like having a good plan and then being punched in the face is like drawn back to the tribal red level, where you're like, you suddenly have to operate with your sensory perceptions and act very quickly.
Yeah. Like when you
having a long-term plan.
When you get stressed, like what level do you move to?
And usually it's a falling back to your lowest, safest level, or like your nearest safe level. So maybe one down, it may be two down. It depends how shaky your foundations are in those places as to how far you fall.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to run through it quickly? Or
sure. All right. Bottom level, survival. It's the beige level. It's generally not talked about so much because it's sort of like where you're at as a baby, where all you know is like you need to care about your survival.
Yeah. So like when people are like, oh, I have a plan, or like, oh, I'll probably live, and like that's their only concern. Like they're operating on this low level. Like they're not paying attention to the resources or to the stress or the things around them. They're just looking at this one thing.
Right. So
it's kind of like the lowest level.
Like this little diagram says it came online 250,000 years ago. Kind of predates modern human thinking. It's just only focused in survival as a culture, but obviously we're looking at individuals as well as culturally.
Yeah.
Which then the next level we have is purple. We're actually looking at a integral level system, which obviously has the spiral levels indicated. Next level is purple, which has a generally known as a magic or mythic, depending on who you talk to and how they conceptualize it. But the story, the personification of the natural forces in the world and the weaving of meaning through that, like the wind or like mother forest, and these sort of large spiritual archetype figures, which then are woven meaning making into sort of how we live. This is sort of pre-tribal, which comes later, where
and this like superstitions would
right.
fall into this category as well.
Yeah, and superstitions are like a really interesting belief structure, like breaking a mirror, because they kind of survive to modern day, and they like cut the threads through, culturally cut through all of these other things like other religions, and they kind of like somehow made it through. Like
whatever, like, yeah,
without like an organizing structure, or without a person saying, like, there's no priest going around preaching the dangers of breaking mirrors. That just the idea of breaking a mirror seems to have survived as a superstitious event.
Yeah. I don't know how long that's been around for, but
only as long as mirrors, which is glass making, which is only a couple thousand years. But even so,
glass making is really old. But yeah, whatever it is, we don't mean to judge superstitions or not. Like, this is a level of interacting with the world, and this is like it's a little bit of a waking up where you're not just worried about like, am I surviving now? You're kind of like, oh, there's like bigger things happening, and you're responding to that, but you're not necessarily able to respond in complex ways. It's very like just whatever is there.
Next level, sort of described as tribal and egocentric. You kind of like you conceptualize these natural forces as inert and lifeless. And well, if I want to live in the world, I'm going to have to build my own damn hut so I don't get poured on with rain. Like, I'm going to have to take my life into my own hands and start shaping it. Personally, if there are other tribes attacking, I'm going to have to go stab them myself. It's got some aggression in there. It's often viewed as a violent or aggressive force. Again, it's not better than the one before. It's just, we're also like, and it's not worse than the one after it. It's just, obviously different levels will have a difficult time coexisting with a tribal culture.
Yeah. So like,
violent.
Yeah, like crews or war bands are like tribal.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's like very
just nomadic strong. People are tribal, tend to be tribal. Obviously today's nomads are probably still going to have phones and computers, but
yeah, but it's like you're in your, like, I mean, like hunting party or something, right? Where it's like, if you ever been in a situation where it's like a couple people and you're doing something intense and you're like working together well. Yeah, like you're in this tribe and you're operating on this different level, that you're operating in this way that's like not superstitious. Like, maybe you guys have superstitions and stuff or quirks that you guys do, but the group, there's a very strong group dynamic happening. And so if you're able to operate on that level, that's a higher level of complexity and development. Like, some people just are not able to work in groups.
Right. So at the next level up,
or a modern day would be like group projects.
At the next level up, Ken Wilber called it amber. Spiral Dynamics had it as blue, which is like, the trouble with tribes is they don't scale. You can have about 100 people in them before you have to start stabbing each other to maintain control. And so we have like a shift into more of a collective rule-making system. So we have a structural lawfulness, which is like, do these things and do the right thing and you'll be a good person.
Well, traditions. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Traditions.
It's traditions. Like, this is how we do things. Like, we do it like this, we do it like that. Like, having all these, this is actually more tribal, I believe. I think like the red stuff is much more group, and then this is more tribal level, but it also,
well, this one scales quite a lot.
It scales,
to in some ways traditional Christianity is one that sits at this level, that it's like, here are the rules that you need to live by in order to be a good person.
Right. And everybody has to agree to that.
Right. And like,
and so
don't break the law or you're not a good person.
Right. So if you're not like, if you're agreeing to the rules, then you're on this level of development. If you're not, then you're not. Right. So like kids
Right.
can't really do this,
And
or
again,
like kids, this is something you're trying to train into
well,
them.
the kids are
All the
still trying to
rules.
learn the rules. They don't know what the rules are, and so they're going to have
Right.
problems there.
Right. So we have like schools that do, like, our society, the way we are doing this is schools. So
Mhm.
like they go to school and then they have to learn all the stuff. And if they do talk out of turn or whatever it is that they're doing, then they get punished. And that's how you train them to follow the rules. And that's at that amber level.
Mhm. Right. So again, we have this problem of we can't really view people as on a single level. We're still going to be a bit in red when we're learning amber, a little bit in magenta and red while we're learning amber. Like we start to spread out over the levels as we start having access to multiples of them. But there's still a usefulness in isolating a single level and thinking about what it's like to be at that level.
Yeah. People are more complex than this, but this is, we've done this they've done this vertical development, and we like it because it does explain a lot, and it does help you orient towards other people and towards the world.
Right. There's also the possibility of like noticing myself as I operate in the traditional mind. Like, oh, there's a right way to do things.
Yeah.
That's like the part of me coming out from that place. And then if I'm good friends with that part of me, I can operate well with it. If it's like feeling like it's trapping me in, I'm going to have a very bad experience of my reality because I'm trapped by like there is a right way to do things, but I'm a heathen.
Right.
So I keep doing things wrong. And then I'm going to feel like I'm going to be punished, or I'm going to feel a constant shame, even though I know the right thing, I'm just keep not doing it. So there's something going on there that then I can work through psychologically if I can get in touch with the part of me that is being oppressive with the traditions and the rules.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the workability of having a system like this. Let's move up to orange. So we've got this one's called it modern. I know orange a little bit better as a counteraction to the rules. The trouble with the rules is they do become a little bit trapping, and we need to occasionally do what is right rather than what fits in the rules. And so we have to break out of the rules. So we have to do some entrepreneurial startups that move fast and break things. And we need to actually improve science by counteracting existing science, right? We need to start challenging, which is very exciting.
I would say science is more, I don't know on the entrepreneurial stuff, but the like rationality and science. So if you think of amber as in, or spiral blue as this, we all agree on this. The next stage is we don't all agree. Right. So like there you have debates, or you have the scientific method, or you have like, it's in a way, it's still like, it still contains a lot of amber where we say like, we're going to agree that we're going to debate, or a friendly debate. The rules of debate, we agree that we're going to do science in such a way, but we don't agree what it is, what the thing is that we're doing. And that's why we're operating on this level, so that we can find out the answer.
And ideally, as we grow up, we want to integrate the prior level. Like we want the rules to still be there, and then we want to like debate about, but sometimes people don't, and they try and trash the previous level, and they look a lot like the level below rather than the level they look a lot like tribal red because the rules don't suit them, and so they just get violent. But actually, you got a bit of there's this funny thing that happens that sometimes levels become friends with each other. So you've got the orange and red can both see the benefit of breaking out of the rules because they're on each side of the rules.
Like this, and this is, you get a lot of the decolonization stuff where the system's not working, and we need to do something else. And a lot of people switch to tribal. They're like, oh, my team is right and the other side is wrong.
Tear down the rules, right?
And sometimes people are like, no, we need to find new ways of doing it. And the problem is that they'll use the same things, because the people who are operating on this red level, they'll just copy the words of the people that are operating on the orange level, because they're like, oh, these are the right words to say, so I'm going to say that, I'm going to like enforce it, but they're not living that life, and they're not acting in that way.
So let's go up one more
that makes level. It confusing.
So let's go one more level. So the last level, the first tier, is green, where we've shifted out of science and rational thinking into values and particularly humanity, like civil rights, like caring about what other people think, It's got this huge benefit caring for the environment. Suddenly, they're really convenient. They made this one green, but like in the way that orange will extract from the natural environment, green is like, whoa, we're about to destroy everything. We have to like stop doing that. That's a big deal.
Right. It's no longer us. I think the thing with the green is that you're looking at the environment as well. Like you're looking at the space that we live in.
Right. It's like early looking at the space that matters as well. There's something interesting here as well, where each level shifts back and forth between individual and collective. So on the red color, you've got like individual egocentric, like I have to go stab the other people to get them out of my way. As you shift to that blue or the amber, you get the like, we as a collective need rules. As you switch back to orange, you're getting this individual like, well, what's really right? I need to go do some damn science myself. And then as you move to green, you're at this collective again. So you've got this back and forth between individual and collective, which is really important because you get like green and blue agreeing, and you get interesting things as you start blending these levels and seeing how they relate to each other.
Just to like give like a sort of straightforward example, orange, they have as capitalism, which is like like we have a system and it's really good and it works and it determines what the product, like what the price of a product is, and it does a very good job of that. And so, but then you have the problem of like, let's say externalities, which is a huge sort of flaw of capitalism in a way, where it's good at dealing with like interpersonal, like two people interacting, but if they create an environmental impact, it's very, that becomes like a problem, right? And so traditionally the way of dealing with it has been the traditional, like the amber level, where the government will step in, let's say, and say, oh, these are the rules, you can't pollute, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. And it becomes very hard for the lower levels to police the higher levels. So it is very hard for government to do that when there's all these capitalists like operating on this higher level than they are. And then so like that's where I think a lot of this like where our society is trying to push the next level is we're trying to move post-capitalism, and that doesn't mean to discard capitalism or not, it depends on your political and stuff, but to at least like create a system where we understand that the capitalist system that exists within the world,
right? Within the environment. If we run out of oxygen, we all die. That's a big problem.
Well, we run out of oxygen, we all die. So like, therefore we need to like carbon tax is very amber, which, may be fine or not. But yeah, like just having that perspective of like the complexity of the capitalist system exists within the world. And like, that also needs to be taken care of. And you can't really do that with capitalism per se. It doesn't mean that there's not a role. And I'm not saying there's no role for capitalism or relationship, things like that. Gets complex, but even just to like drop it for a second and just to look at that space. And so you have like civil rights and stuff. And people try to tie it in, right? Like you can say like, civil rights is anti or pro-capitalism because you got to exploit workers, or now workers are free to, whatever side you're going to take, but free to participate, so that makes capitalism better. But it's sort of like it's sort of this like higher perspective than capitalism, where or capitalism or socialism or whatever, where we should like stop oppressing, like we like people, our political system should be built in a way where people thrive, they're not there to oppress people. And that's like a higher level.
This is the first tier. I have a really cool alternative theory here that there's a level missing, because at some point people get to green and then they go like, what was the point of all this? Why did I go through these different levels of meaning making, like different ways of what mattered to me? And then at that point there's this like nihilist phase. Yeah, a lot of people go through this like, none of those things are really the thing that matters, and it's a like deconstruction and a falling apart of the previous meaning making structures before emerging into, it's got integral teal or spirodynamics yellow, which is a different, it's called, they often referred to as the second tier, like a way of thinking that realizes that the prior meaning making systems need to integrate with each other in order to be a more holistic system. They actually need to work together. right? It's no longer green against orange and green against amber and green against red. It's actually all of these things and all of these moments of myself at these different times having to cohere into a whole that is more organized, that actually suits itself.
Right.
But there is this gap. It's described as a gap, but I suspect there's this nihilist, like, falling apart moment, which is necessary. Some people have it more than others, but it's definitely a moment of confusion that is sort of built in there between the first tier and the second tier. And then you get to yellow, which is this.
Just to jump in there, I like this. I really like this like idea you have. It's very reminiscent of like activists who burn out,
Right.
Which is like another way of this manifests, and where you're like very very into something, and then you just like you lose faith, and then you're back at zero, and you have no meaning, and everything is nothing.
Right. And then Dark Knight of the Soul a little bit.
Yeah, like that is a real thing that happens to people, and
right. But it's hard to map, unfortunately. Very frustratingly, it's quite hard to map. But I think it's a real thing, and it belongs right there.
Yeah, I like that, because then after you go through that where there's nothingness, then you get to like reconstruct the journey again.
But you get maybe there's like a re-observation, which is a classic spiritual path, to like go through each of the layers again and like see how I've done it and like see if I can weave them together. So I think like there's that, and then there's also like you're kind of nothing, and you realize like you could have been, like it could have been any of these things, right? Like it could have been a different combination of stuff as well. Right. It's also maybe a realization that each of these is important in a different way.
Yeah.
And each of these help me get places in different ways. It's also, that moment is a reflection to sort of suddenly like look back and see the system. Like I think from the blue level is when you can first start conceptualizing the system, and then from when you get to yellow is when you can start making the system yourself. But there's like between blue and yellow is when you can start to like deeply understand it and start reflecting on it and seeing other people, like if I go for green, right, seeing other people operate at different levels, and we should respect them at the levels they're at.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think you skipped orange because like I think modern day we do have like such strong good answers almost in a way. Not to like piss off other people, but like we have like very good answers that are very strong, and so it's kind of like like science is the answer and capitalism is the answer, and if you don't believe that, then you're an idiot. But also like also there's like actual like problems with this stuff, and this might not be the answer. I'm gonna skip the higher levels just because like
so we can stop on yellow there, that like suddenly you can start seeing the system and operating in the systems, which looks a lot like Kegan level 5, where you're like fluid with systems. But then there's turquoise and indigo.
And then when
there's a different conversation there. The trouble is, as you get to the top of these maps, it's hard to describe them and hard to conceptualize them and hard to not just put myself at the highest level and be like, you know what the highest level is? It's however I think.
Right.
It's kind of better to leave them there.
You need a certain amount of pressure. Like you need a certain amount of people like doing the thing so that you can bounce your stuff off each other. And it is very hard to find people that can like organize systems of systems. Like sometimes you get people that are like, oh, there's different systems and they're all the same. But then to be like, no, like some of these systems are better than others, and we can like start to organize that and
start choose doing the like global holistic system thinking, like, there's something else going on here.
It's very rare to meet some like you I think you can find it more if you like specialize in fields. So like certain fields, like they'll have like, oh, we use these systems for this and this is for this. But if you're doing like just holistic as like a person on this planet living and like trying to make sense of things, it's very, very hard.
Well, one way we do holistic is top down. So we don't have this bottom up method of like all of the levels below make sense. We're doing the like, yep, this is the whole picture, or like, well, that's here I am in the world. Given that I'm here in the world, how do I think about it? Which is, a kind of a shortcut to go from top down.
Yeah, I don't count that. Like if you're saying like my people are the best and everybody else is just not, then like everybody else sucks. Like who cares about them? Like you haven't done the red of like you can see the other groups and you can see that their value, even though they're from a different place and they're not your specific tribe. Like baseball analogy, if you're not like understanding the value of other teams, then you're not there. Like I don't like fine, maybe you have like a good thing, but you're not there developmentally. And that doesn't mean that you should be dismissed, but etc. Okay, so
Tell me about AQAL.
now we're at the crazy one. So this one is like the mother of all. You want developmental theories? Like this is
integral theory, actually.
This is integral, but it's as far as developmental theories go, like this is the map of maps, if you will.
This is I love integral, and I love it. For one of the reasons I love it is that it has this map, the quadrants, levels, lines, states, and types.
Yeah, this is could we go too far? And we don't know, but we're gonna give it a shot.
well, we've already got we've been talking about stages and levels already, so we've got kind of like the middle section.
So let's break this down. Okay, how do you want to start? So let's
name what we've already talked about. So we've got the spiral dynamics is listed here, sort of second from the left here, with beige, purple, red, blue, orange, green.
We're not going to go through everything. I think
we're not going to redo it, but they're there. And of course, the first tier and the second tier, sort of described. The next over, you have pre-rational, rational, and trans-rational, which is
don't go through every line. No, this is how we're doing it. So we got this.
We got different people's theories here lined up.
Yeah, so we got the spiral dynamics, which is the stuff we talked about. We've got these lines, which are different lines of development. So remember at the beginning when we had with the kids, we had different lines.
No, those aren't lines. These are different level systems. So the black one on the right, the far right black one at the top, in very little writing, it says
inter-individual.
No, above that.
Below
that. After individual.
Intuitional?
No, to the right of inter-individual.
Magician?
No, oh my god. It says Kegan. It says the word Kegan because that's
Kegan. It's too small. Okay, let me zoom.
Sorry. There you go.
Yeah.
So we've got, this is an attempt to sort of line up different level systems.
Yeah.
And so this is to sort of map Kegan to the spiral dynamics, and there's a couple other people's systems like pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional, and pre-verbal, verbal, and like onwards. Like these are different developmental systems, and we're sort of trying to line them up into like how they sort of map to each other. Even the one in the middle is Susan Cook-Groder with altitudes. Like these are all level system. And the different people have named it different things. You've got a little bit of Torbert's work there in Diplomat, Expert, Achiever. Of course, different people name different things, but they roughly map complexity against each other, which I think is super cool that all of these different people came up with different theories of growth and complexity, and they like kind of line up. Not perfectly, but yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think is so cool, because like you can pick a specific thing and then go down that line, which I like to do a lot because it just it makes it smaller, easier to handle. But when you put it all together, then you get this like picture of what an adult could be.
Right.
I like this adult angle. We haven't done it yet. This is the first time, but it feels very true.
So on the very far left, you've got types.
Yeah. So we got types. So that's like Ingram. I would put in probably like astrology as well. It's probably
Enneagram.
like that.
Enneagram, 9 types of Enneagram. Astrology. So there's totally a rant here about astrology is definitely a type system, but it's what I would call is a less mature type system, although there are people today trying to get the more developed version of a type system. I call it a less mature type system because it's the type where you're born into it, right? So you were born on a particular day of the year. That means this is your type. Whereas the more advanced type systems, you've got in the MBTI types, you've got introvert and extrovert, and that's potentially a spectrum. With practice and as you go into adulthood, you can get freedom on that type. You can move anywhere from introvert to extrovert, and you'll ultimately probably habitually end up in one place, but you don't want to be trapped in like, I'm always an introvert. That's a very self-limiting belief. It's a very trapped place to be. What you want is like days when I go to parties, I act as an extrovert, and days when I stay home, I act and get the benefit of being an introvert. I want access to both ends of that polarity as a typology. So astrology is kind of like a limited typology because you're sort of stuck.
Well, I would say the astrology is lower on this level. Like I would put that as like
a less complex, right? Well, it happens to have come from
less developed, yeah, and how we're using development,
right? Whereas sort of like the Enneagram, a later use of Enneagram is there are 9 types, but to be able to wear each type like a mask and just fluidly swap between them as needed for different situations.
Right.
And that's like playing to your strengths and also working on your weaknesses. If you look at Martin Seligman's work with values in action, he has about 20 to 60 different qualities that a person can have, and you'll be good at some and bad at others. We want to like play to your strengths and then bring up your weaknesses. That's his sort of like psychological growth theory. But that's so typologies. We've also got male and female. I want to put in a good word for healthy and unhealthy, which is a type of types. Like within masculine or feminine, you could be healthy or unhealthy, which is like super exciting. It's suddenly you can see, if you can see that types and there are types of types, that gets really interesting. Like, but often when we talk about type systems, we're like trying to be the healthy versions of those types and trying to avoid the unhealthy moments of those types.
Yeah, and shout out to all you Geminis, be healthy.
Right. So that's typology.
But yeah,
some people really dwell with typology. Well, I suck at typology, but I really like levels, like vertical development. And what I'm talking about in terms of healthy and unhealthy is a vertical development system within typologies, right?
No,
there's healthy and unhealthy.
You're making it too complex.
Right. Still, it's the thing there.
What I would because you're starting to like fractal it, but I think people maybe are still trying to like understand what's going on.
Yeah, the fractals. Let me allude to the fractal and leave it there.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I would say that the systems will fit into one of these developmental stages. So like I'm saying the astrology is probably like purple, and you're saying the Enneagrams are like orange or something type. I don't know. I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah.
Masculine and feminine is probably even just instinctive, like it's just the beige one.
Right, but they do get more complicated, and they do have an interpenetrative relationship.
Right. So then you can start to build like the masculine and feminine would probably be like beige, but then the archetypal masculine feminine of like the different like ways you can be, like we were talking about the lady, the housewife lady, like that, that could be much more complex developmentally.
We also got
and wait 1 second, let me finish one more thing. And then the types, the reason like the distinction about the types is that one isn't better than the other. They're just like they're all on the same, all the types are on the same level of development, but they're all on the same level of development. But the types, but not all type categories are on the same level of development.
Right. So interestingly, spiral dynamics is not meant to be a ladder. It's meant to be like an expanding circle, like a spiral, because it's meant to sort of neutralize this ladder type system. Because if you imply a ladder, then you imply sort of insult to the lower levels. And like, if there is a way up, I want to be as high as possible. And it's kind of much as, I do. I also want to be healthy on the lower levels. I don't want to just leave behind all the toddlers.
Yeah. Right. And you have to go back and deal with that stuff.
Right.
For sure.
It would be a pretty broke society if we abandoned all toddlers because they just didn't know how to think like adults.
Yeah. Or the parts of ourselves that are underdeveloped.
Right.
And there always is, and you're always having to relearn stuff, and new things always happen.
Right.
So you're always moving.
So there's some sort of like embracing our prior selves and like integrating it rather than like shadowing it and forgetting about it, which is super important. Much as we're talking about growing up, we're also wanting to like grow down and grow into encompassing those younger selves. All right, show me the bottom right of this map.
Okay. Lines of development.
Lines of development.
Dun.
So let's talk about lines.
I actually don't know this so much. Yeah.
There's a couple of like really clear lines. So the moral line, there was Kohlberg's stages of moral development, where there's a classic, should Heinz steal the drug, is a classic question. So Heinz' wife has cancer, and this is the question they ask as on the evaluation of moral development. Heinz' wife has cancer, and a chemist has made a drug that will save her life, but he's charging $200. This is how old the question was. He's charging $200 for it. Should Heinz steal the drug? And this is a great question because it like stratifies moral reasoning, right? So some people are like, yeah, steal the drug, screw the chemist, duh. Other people are like, no, stealing is wrong. And then other people like at a later stage are like, well, it's actually the right thing to do to steal the drug to save the wife, even though it's a bad thing to do, right? And that's a moral reasoning in a growing level of complexity. So this is one of the questions from Kohlberg in his stages of moral development, that he surveyed a lot of people and he realized that there's actually multiple ways to reason about this, where it actually goes yes, no, yes. And so the high level looks like the lower level, but the high level's got a much more complicated, and basically you give it to little kids like 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and 15-year-olds. And the 15-year-olds are back at yes, steal the drug, because it seems like the right thing to do, even though stealing is bad. But the 10-year-olds are like, no, that's bad. And the 5-year-olds are like, yeah, I'm just gonna, impulsively just steal the drug. And so there's something, he studied moral development, so he really developed our understanding of that line better than other people, better than other lines. And then of course we can put other things on these lines, like mathematical ability or emotional self-awareness, relational capacity. Like another really interesting one is sexuality and ethics in general. So there's this curiosity that we see these enlightened masters, to bring that back in for a moment, meditation masters who are highly spiritually attained, somehow sleeping with their students in a way that the West goes, that's unacceptable. So we've got like some spiritual development line where they're very high, and the sexual development line where they're like sort of low. And they're like, it's okay to just sleep with all my students, which from the Western perspective, we really disapprove of that. So these lines can be sort of independent of each other, that you can develop up one and still be questionable or like lower in another, which is super exciting because we can start to sort of think about improving ourselves on various lines. I think there's also something very interesting here where sometimes as you get higher up one line, you have to like lift up other lines to get higher again. So for example, if we take sexuality, if you want to get better at sexuality, like develop your complexity in sexuality, you actually need morality and ethics and like relationality. You need to like bring other people into the experience in better ways in order to have better time sexually. You need to actually have that emotional awareness. Like you need those other lines to grow in order to make it possible to make that specific line grow. But this is lines of development. It's a different area to level systems, but obviously you can also break a level system into its specific lines, like we did earlier with the kids.
Right.
Yeah, super important.
Very nice. States of consciousness?
States, yeah, okay.
Or should we just leave? Should we just leave it the rest?
There's one at the back there called states. It's really hard to describe because what we have is this vertical development system where we're like being at the top is good. And then we have these states where sort of like awareness to your states is better. The more aware you are, and the more from gross to subtle to causal to non-dual, the higher up you are. But then there was this thing that happened in vertical development psychology where they used to stack the states on top of the vertical development. So the states, like the non-dual states, were always on top. And we were seeing this thing where it just didn't make any sense. And then they decided to like stack them side by side. And now we have a grid. So you can sort of be at the lower vertical development and in the gross, the subtle, or the causal, or the non-dual states, which makes it possible to sort of see why you can have someone who's very, very aware of the subtle movement in their body, but they maybe don't understand capitalism. Like those are suddenly like different things.
Yeah. Just to like go through that the way I understand it. Gross is like, okay, do you need me to like spell this out for you? And if, then you're on the gross state. Can you pick up subtle cues? Let's say like this is like socially, right? So does it need to be explicit? Then you're on gross. Can you pick up on the subtleties that are going around you? Then you're in a subtle state. A causal is like, can you figure out what's going on? Like, even if people are not not signaling. So like imagine playing a poker game and just on a very basic level, somebody puts all their money in, but they have a poker face. You're like, oh, probably that guy has a good stuff. So like you're just like extrapolating based on that. And then non-dual is like, I don't know, what is non-dual?
It's hard to, I mean, here's a problem. As we get high at the top of the vertical development, or like high at the top of states, like how do you even describe these things? This is a real big problem. So
yeah, so like I think like causal would be like if you're doing poker and you see the guy put all those chips and you're like, okay, he's got a good hand. And then non-dual would be like, well, it's actually really complicated and there's all these other things going on at the time, right? And like
I'm like him relating to the game and me relating to him, and there's a lot going on. But I can see I'm like floating in the whole system of what's going on all at once. There's another way to cut it, which might map really usefully, which is if I say gross, I'm talking about like literal physical sensations in the body. If I'm talking about
this is subtle, like meditative,
meditative, yeah. If I'm talking about subtle, like if I'm in pain, it's like much more clearly, concretely, like I'm in pain. If I'm like having a happy or having a sad, it's much more subtle what's going on. It's not the same as like apparent pain. And that's like we've moved from gross to subtle in that sense. If I'm having a thought, again, it's not like a subtle thing like an emotion. It's lightning fast, and it's just this is how I think about the world. A thought is much more causal than subtle or gross. So there's a skill meditatively
like to operate. You're making connections that don't currently exist, but you're saying that they do overall exist.
Right. And from a meditative perspective, you want to know like which one you're in. You just want to be self-aware about if you're in gross, if you're in subtle, if you're in causal. You want to be able to still your mind very well so that you can be super clear about which one you're in. And you can operate. And then ultimately you want to be operating in a non-dual state where you want to be able to witness it and also operate, like move it or change it at the same time as experiencing it, which is a super interesting puzzle.
Yeah, everything just kind of like, it's very alive. Like everything's just like working together at the same time. So yeah, it is hard to like, because you can't remove yourself from it or else you're not really doing it.
We got next, quadrants. You're gonna
quadrants. So quadrants is like the backbone of integral. Is that what we're saying?
Let's go for that. Quadrants is a huge key of integral, where you have on the left you have interior and on the right you have exterior. So interior being inside my own experience, like inside my psyche. Like,
you're pulling it to the meditation, but I think it works more exoteric than that.
Go on.
So if you're just like you're talking about things in general, so you can talk about like interior, exterior, individual, or group. So if you're talking consciousness, then it's what am I experiencing like inside me? What am I experiencing outside me? What am I experiencing? What is happening in the group? But you can look at like organisms like cells. Like, so if you want to study a cell, it's what's happening inside the cell, what's happening outside the cell, like what's its environment like, and then how does the cell interact, like the single cell versus like the group of cells that would form to become an organelle. And so those are all different perspectives that you can take on anything. I think it's like it's non-specific. Like this is just how existence is. Like I think this is very existential.
Interesting. I'm excited. You're right, and also I think you're missing something.
Well, I'm missing a lot of stuff. I just did a quick
something very specific. I mean, let's go for interior and exterior first, like one dimension first. So exterior, what is going on outside me? Like outside my psyche. I'm pretty sure there's a world out there. I'm pretty sure there's a computer in front of me. Like I'm pretty sure, like let's not argue whether science is real. Like I'm pretty sure the world around me is outside, right? Or there's some way of taking a perspective where many things seem outside me, right? That's one.
Yeah. Like this is just like a very basic, like just like a normal level, like things are happening, and this is something like with like mental illness does like messes up a lot. Is it can be hard to tell what's happening inside and what's happening outside. Right. So like any of these things, like paranoia is like, is that happening inside you? As in, like, is your brain firing and telling you that people are out to get you, or people actually out to get
out
you,
get me.
and your inside stuff is working well?
Right. Great question. Good puzzle, worth exploring. Some fascinating questions of like, how would you know if you were in it? If you were already in the experience of feeling paranoid, how would you know if it's true or false?
No, we're not.
Great question. That's like a thread that I'm just gonna leave.
Right. That's not the thread we're doing right now. The thread we're doing is just explaining what this is, and then individual group is
so
like.
Wait. That was exterior. Let's go to interior. So interior. There's maybe two easy ways to point to interior. One is like what's going on inside my body from my own perspective. Like you can measure my body from the outside and you can measure my heart rate, right?
Sure.
And then I can experience my heart rate on the inside and I can recognize my heart rate as anxiety on the inside. I am anxious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like, are you doing like the egosyntonic, egodystonic thing again? So I don't know where you're getting.
Yeah. Kind of. There's something interesting there of like, it seems like there are things happening inside my conscious experience as separate to the outside. And it's not just the heart rate that you can measure from the outside, but it is the qualia of what it's like to be inside my conscious experience having a heartbeat right now.
Yeah.
And there's a aliveness and a like, there is a different domain to the domain of the external world in my interior first person perspective of what it's like to be me right now.
Yeah. What are you contrasting this to? I feel like you got really deep right there, which I enjoyed, but it doesn't, I don't see how it relates to what we're doing exactly.
Right.
But I mean, it's still cool, like to randomly do stuff.
There's something of an interior. There's something of an interior that is different to like, there's a way to do my interior sort of like from a third person. Like Elliot is a person who is sad right now. Right. And there's like there's a way in which I'm not actually in my interior and doing that. I'm sort of stepping out into my exterior in order to like define myself as a sad person.
I don't know why you're doing this, but yeah, you're moving like third person perspective.
There's something else here to recognize sadness from the interior experience.
Yeah, to like know, to like be sad and know you're sad versus like to see that you have tears on your face and then to extrapolate that you're sad.
Right, but here's where I'm confused. I noticed the language you used in that sentence was a lot of yours, like you're sad and notice you're sad.
Yeah.
I switched from that language from like language like you're sad and you know you're sad to like I'm sad and I know I'm sad. That's where there's suddenly a jump in depth.
Yeah. I wasn't planning on going that deep because we're explaining what the charts are.
But
if you want to go that deep, people aren't going to understand what the hell's going on. They're going to get tripped up in the
here's the problem. Integral's a living system. You can't effectively explain interior upper left quadrant subjective first person experience without going here.
Yes, I can.
But you missed it. You don't. You're not in it unless you're in it. I'm not in it unless I'm alive.
I'm not. No, that's not what we're doing. We're not doing the practice. We're explaining what's going on.
But you can't connect. You can't disconnect it. Like that's a theoretical system.
This I just did.
Living.
But all right. Okay. Okay. You want me to do it living? Guys, the thing Elliot just did, that was interior, individual.
All right.
Happy?
Sure.
I am the, whatever the hell this chart is, master. I'm the best at this. What's the name called again?
AQAL.
AQAL. I am the AQAL master. Because I can do the living system.
Here's the thing though. I can go straight there. Like I have that on like it's nice to have a map, but I have a like, let's just do it. Like I have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other dimension.
You're gonna confuse people.
Interior.
But like, yeah, you're right. You're right. Like, let's make the distinction between like, this is the map. Like, we're just explaining what's going on. We're not like I mean, I guess Elliot is living this, but I wasn't living this stuff because it's too much. Like we were just gonna get like lost in everything, and this video is
Like,
gonna be like 80 million hours.
let me say this. As I slow down,
It's just gonna be
and
my
I
life. It's
try,
gonna be Justin TV, but Daniel TV, where they just follow me around with the camera.
as I slow down and try and describe my interior subjective experience, my heartbeat pops into my awareness like super vivid.
Okay, yeah.
The tenderness appears, the like what it's like to be alive and be me
Yeah.
suddenly appears super, super present in my awareness. Right?
That's beautiful.
It's beautiful and exhausting.
That's like a very embodied interior individual quadrant.
Right.
All right. Now you want to do it this way? We're
Other dimension, individual and
now
group.
pick
right?
another one. Now pick another one. Pick another quadrant and
wait. So individual and group. That's the other dimension. We've done the interior, exterior. Let's do individual and group. So on the top we have individual. On the bottom we have collective. So lower left we have the we, right?
Yeah.
And so
I want you to jump into the bottom right one.
bottom right. Well, wait. Let's do bottom left first.
Okay.
That gives so bottom left. Nice easy practice like circling if you've never done it. You sit in a group with a group of people and you we each comment on what's going on for us and how we experience the world. And what we end up with is suddenly jumping into the we notice shared feelings. Like I can say something like, we're all kind of
no. You're gonna do this. You're gonna pull this stuff where you're like, oh, Daniel, you're not in it, and now I'm in it. You gotta be in this. I don't want you to.
What do you want me to be?
From their perspective, I want you to be interior group, and I want you to be there.
Interior
group. Embody it. Yeah, we're group right now. You, me, and the audience.
Yeah.
So us three are in a group together, and I want you to explain interior group from while being inside this group. Yeah, you're gonna come at me.
There's two things. One is the like,
do it well.
what are we looking for, and the second is what is it right now, right? So what are we looking for is the greater than the sum of the parts. The whole.
No.
Right,
say the we
outside.
perspective. No. I'm not saying it wrong. I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I'm saying you're wrong.
Well then, okay. What's the we perspective? We're running a podcast right now.
Yeah. So be we. So say we are this, and start say before when you did I, you said when you did interior, you said I am this.
Yeah.
Now I want you to do we are this, and I want you to talk from there.
We are running a podcast. We are trying to describe this. We are arguing about this. We are about to murder each other right here on the spot.
Yeah.
We are tearing each other to threads.
We are fighting how psychotechnologists. This is how we do our battles.
This is a wizard battle right here. Yeah. And this is a collective experience because we're kind of both in.
This is an ambush, by the way. But
this is an ambush. This is a two-sided ambush because I ambushed you 5 minutes ago.
No, you ambushed me, and this is like my responding. I got out of the kill zone. Classic ambush. I got out of the kill zone. I'm like, oh, this is where you got me. I'm gonna like move past that, recognize the larger space, and then turn it around on you. Now you're
so. Where's your we space? Bring some we. Like, what's the collective?
No. Nice try. You're trying to turn this around. You got to bring the we because you started.
I did. I said we're in a wizard.
No, you're still saying I. You're not saying you're like talking about. You kind of like started to move in, but I wasn't going with it, and so so you couldn't pull it off.
Okay,
that's because I'm annoyed. You caught me off guard on this.
Give me a hard time.
Yeah, so let's do a we. I'm feeling like I got my revenge. I defended my honor.
Right. So what do we mean by we? What do we mean by we space and collective
this.
Experience? That's a great.
I think we can move past this. Yeah. So we were fighting. There was some like hurt feelings and
It's gotta be real, right? Like.
Yeah. No, it was. I felt like you ambushed me.
Well,
and then it felt like a hostile environment a little bit. Like our level of hostile, not like real life level.
Yeah. But this is what we mean. This is what I mean by interior. Like if we want to demonstrate the interior, we have to demonstrate.
Talk from the we. I'm not like
okay. We are demonstrating.
This is what we mean. Yeah, this is what we mean when we say talk from the when we're talking from the interior.
Right.
This is like
the collective interior.
Yeah.
This is our interior.
Yeah, this is us collectively, speaking as and from the group.
Right. And the vibes of like, how are we relating right now? This is the like, are we good, or are we about to like cancel the podcast? Like there's like, we're both Elliot on this side is monitoring the relationship. I assume Daniel on that side is also monitoring the relationship of like, how are we doing? Are we safe to keep arguing, or do we need to like get out of this tension?
Yeah. Well, what is it? Yeah. What's the feel? What are we moving towards? What are we orbiting around? And so we're feeling each other. And it is feeling more connection. Normally we do a lot of normally we do more silence and like let that sit and process, but we kind of decided a while ago that we were going to not keep a lot of silences.
We also got to talk about the lower right quadrant.
Yeah, let's do that.
So lower right, we're going to move back to the safe side, back to the exterior, where we can start to, it's possible to observe groups, right? So you see, I went from we to it's possible to like observe the political system and the way that it interacts with it.
Yeah, we can see the outside world. Right. And this is stuff we've already done, right?
Or we can see the world from the outside as well. Or we can see potentially the group systems, the social systems from the outside as well. Like, what is it like to run a politics, like to run an election in a country, voting booths? We can see what people do, like looking at that from the outside, you can see how it's done. We can see like intergroup politics. We can see like the board of a company, how they argue with each other. We can look at it from the exterior, and we can see like every board of every company has its culture embedded in it, and how that like affects the corporate hierarchy below it is a study of the exterior of a group.
Oh, this is missing a dimension.
Which one? Which dimension are we missing?
It should have an addition, like kind of like personal and God or something, where because you, like when we said we exterior, you went like we went to different places of what the we exterior is, because I'm looking at the we exterior as like, what is our group, like all three of us looking at the outside world like. And I was going to start like talking about how we view culture, like the culture war, and like how we view being in public on the internet was where I was going to go.
Right.
But that's you went thing, yeah, you went somewhere else, and that's a different thing. And these are also different.
There is another diagram that overlays like layers of perspective taking on top of this map.
Yeah.
So like,
I forgot what the word is, but it's something. Yeah.
So me, from my perspective, me looking at you, being like, Daniel's the it in this moment. I'm going to talk about him from the outside. I can see he's sitting there looking at me, like us from the we perspective, then like us from the outside, what must we look like if someone to our audience, and then we can go back to like,
I think our audience is part of us. It's part of the we.
There's a different. We can draw a different line that includes our audience.
Yeah, right? That's the one we've been doing. I like to include them.
But then I can go back to
blame them for things when things go wrong. You could be like, you guys just like listened and didn't help at all.
but I can go back to like individual first person from as recognizing my part of the collective, right? Yeah. What I say here influences the group. Like Daniel tried to attack my status. Like, okay, we're playing a status game here. I'm experiencing what it's like to be in a status game. Like, okay. Like I can go like,
but also paying attention to the group, that our group doesn't lose status, and like trying to like, that's where I think like the non-zero, like the positive sum games come in, where I'm like trying to play with someone, I'm trying to win, trying to maximize my portion, but I'm also trying to maximize the game's portion as well,
right?
And also the iterations over time, so I have to make sure that they win as well.
I'm kind of pointing to, we're back in that upper left individual interior, but kind of from a higher perspective. Like there's a way to be there, but in a higher perspective. And equally, there's a way to be in the exterior from a higher perspective, and the exterior and the interior collective from a higher perspective. Like I can speak of the we, like including our audience includes a greater perspective than just me and Daniel. That's like a we that includes them. Like we're like a bigger we somehow. and potentially what it must be like to look at us right now as we're talking. It's a different perspective. So there's like a further place when you said like you wanted to see us in the place of us, what it's like to be on the internet from the outside.
No, like we have a relationship with the exterior.
So like the we has a relationship with the exterior.
Yeah. So like we trust our audience, but we don't trust the other people on the internet. And it's because I've seen those people and they're not always good people.
Right.
And so there is like we have a relationship with that where we're not going to talk about certain things or reveal certain personal information that we would have normally wanted to because of that relationship. We do take that. But then also the exterior to the we as well.
We also have
I don't know,
put in a good word for new GPT systems that are starting to be some sort of like exterior collective of knowledge or something. Like we're in the lower right. Like we've collected all the knowledge and we've thrown them into a thingy-majig that is now like a neural net, giant neural net, 71 billion parameters. We're up to GPT-4 today. So huge. And so it's kind of like an exterior group, like knowledge collective thing, right? And it's definitely out there and it's definitely one like a single entity and we can sort of interact with it on, like I can go type messages to it and see what it responds. Like we got something new growing that we may be able to, like, if we can ask it the right question, it can probably express a greater complexity of systematic understanding than we've ever previously been able to understand.
Yeah,
which is exciting.
That's cool stuff.
Anyway, this is AQAL. This is welcome to integral theory.
Yeah. And we got one more model.
One more. Oh yeah, the favorite model.
Around.
All right. Favorite model.
So we invented a new model.
Yeah.
And this is
we didn't actually name it. It's got to be like the model of knowing about vertical development.
It's the model of knowing about it's the model of people who are aware of models.
Specifically vertical development. I mean, you can probably make a more generic one of like, have you heard my cool new theory? And I suspect that's a really important reflection to build. But layer one,
let's go through it. Yeah. This is more so like everybody can like understand. You can just make your own models, and that's cool. And I feel like if you make your own models, you get a better appreciation for the ones that already exist because they're actually like really hard to come up with.
Right.
Okay, so we have the first one is unaware. That's the first level. That means you've never heard of it. So that was maybe you before this podcast.
Yeah.
Second one is first introductions. That was you at the beginning of it. Wow, you guys have been like progressing. So
whoa, you've already climbed up a level.
Skilled is you can operate within them and talk about them well. So
they got this.
You might be able to do this. Yeah, if you were paying attention, then you could do this. If
you've heard of vertical development systems before, you've probably had a head start, you know.
Yeah. It depends how much you're paying attention, so it's your own fault.
All right.
If you're not skilled. Advanced, so then you know them well. You know them so well that you forget to talk about them all the time.
Yeah. Which is definitely a level. Like this is like you just read the book, like, and it's like you're not a week after reading the book, you're like 2 months in, you're like, you don't need to keep telling people that you just read this book because it was 2 months ago. Like it's starting to like settle. Yeah,
you're on the next stage and you kind of just do it or not. The masters. So I think this is where we are on this level.
Right, because we've mastered the system.
We've mastered it and we can create our own. So next we're gonna move to transcendent. So you always think you're higher up on the ladder than other people. So we're not quite there yet. We don't think we're the highest yet, but we will soon. Yeah, we're getting
there soon.
And then post vertical systems. So vertical models are too limiting and they don't fully enable beings to express their fullness. So this is like, fuck it, I had enough. I'm out.
Well, like these are beautiful scaffolds, and they do enable us to reflect on like, where am I in my journey compared to other people's journeys? What does the map look like? But if I was just a map I'm not a full human, right? I'm more than a map. It's actually really way more complicated. I had moments of spiral dynamics green before I really understood blue. Like I cared about other people before I cared about the rules. Like the map is actually all over the place when I like really nuance my life. Like let's throw out all these vertical development models because they don't help at all.
And remember, like it's important to like pull yourself away from screens and to pull yourself away from like analyzing people and to live in the world and to be with people and just like to be with people. I know not need to always be
the greatest teacher is real life.
Yeah. Psychotechnology.